Welcome to the Groomer Morning Show. This is the Tesla Roadster portion of our podcast and starts at 11 o'clock every Tuesday morning. We have a special guest here today. I'm Pete Gruber.
Michael Manning.
And
Mark Schaffner.
Guys, we're getting bad buzz on the middle mic. You need to move the cord off of the block.
Okay, probably the power supply there. Is that better? So today's podcast is going to be focused on suspension issues with the Tesla Roadster. And what we have here is a bunch of different samples of what is in a Tesla Roadster. And the reason this is important is as these cars are aging, we're finding more and more problems. Not a surprise. I mean, some of them are going on 15 years now. Mm-hmm. And you have rubber, you have things that are getting corroded and wearing out. And Mike is our suspension expert in-house and has done remarkable things, taking Roadsters that rode like dump trucks and turning them into Cadillacs. All right.
Every time we talk,
So we've got a little buzz here. Not literally, folks, microphone buzz. And we're going to see if we can get rid of that. Is it gone? All right. Looks like we're better. So probably a good place to start. We've got some news items later if we run out of things to talk about. But Mike, what are you finding with these Roadsters?
Well, we're bringing these in. We're taking them for a test drive. We kind of feel how they're handling. We do a consistent road course around here that gives us different types of cement. We'll do different types of asphalt and then some freeway expansion joints as we do our loop. And
you know, we even have speed bumps, come to think of it.
Yes,
up and
we
down
do.
Lone Cactus.
Yes,
yeah, you
we
get
do.
4 of those.
We do speed bumps as well. One of the things I find when we're doing this is the shocks are, the majority of them that come across are blown out either on the dampening or compression side. You can kind of feel it. If you feel where it's bumping in the seat or in your back area, that's the back end of the car. If you feel it from the steering wheel or the pedal box area where your gas and brake pedal is, then that would be coming from the front end. So yesterday we took a car for a spin. As we went over a couple of different changes in the roadway, we were able to detect that the front driver's side strut was blown out. And then we went around the corner and we could tell that the rear right was also having issues. So bring it in, we take a look at it. We can see the dampeners are leaking. It's an age issue, and then we start looking at, because the dampeners are wearing out as well, and we have age with the rubber on the control arms. Like this piece right here. This is the rear control arm, and these get pulled out when we do battery packs. We get to inspect them a little bit better as well. But we have the control arm bushings, which are similar to right here, the new ones. And these things start to age. And what happens is the travel of this is supposed to just go up and down. And the mount right here is where the shock goes. And then the upright for the bearing and the wheel is attached right here.
Okay.
So when these parts start to go out and age, they'll start moving. Instead of going up and down like this, they start walking back like this. And then that puts accelerated wear on these ball joints. And typically what will happen is we can catch them when we do our inspections, and we can replace them, and we catch it in time. You know, you sometimes, like the older cars you see going down the freeway, and the wheel would be all the way up to the wheel well, and the car would kind of be dug into the ground.
Right.
That's when these ball joints break. And so basically you lose control of that wheel. It goes up in the wheel well. So it's very important, you know, we keep our wheels, you know, working. So suspension is a very important part of that. So the newer ones, see if we can put this right here.
Yeah, we'll set it back down. If you can hold it up, Mark, he's
I'll point it
show
out.
that part right there.
So this is a new style. The replace, you can see the area that holds the grease is kind of pushed down and starting to age crack. A lot of them start to seep grease out. You need the grease that's inside the ball joint in the bottom here because that keeps the lubrication. So this is being pushed down. It's also being pulled up, but it's supposed to, like, this is really tight and it's really hard to move, but this one moves around pretty freely.
Right.
So that's a sign of wear. You know, these parts are designed to have a shelf life in the vehicle, and you know, these cars are at an age now we're starting to see where these are starting to become a problem.
So this is a part that is actually pressed out of here.
Yes, we have
Right.
a special tool for that.
Okay, all right. Which is something else that I wanted to interject as we go along here. You know, some of our Roadster owners are very mechanical and very technical, and they like doing some of this work themselves. And then others may just simply decide to turn this over to their local suspension shop, which is another thing that I want to interject. I know there are a few of us here in the States that can do this type of work or specialize in Tesla Roadsters, but for something low-tech like this, you don't have to send it cross-country to get this work done.
Right.
You can pick a good suspension shop in your territory, and armed with the right parts like this, Roadster specific, they will, intuitively understand what needs to be done, like pressing out that bushing.
And we can partner with the shock suspension stores to get them the parts that they need if necessary, correct?
Yeah, we have a whole complete kit for the vehicle. We can do front side, back side. Because of the wear items, I always stress that replace on axle. So if you have a front left that's going out, replace left and right so that everything is kept in spec. Because if one side's going, the other side's right behind it. And you end up doubling your costs later down the road because you got to go back to the shop and they've got to swap stuff out. It's also really important to get a wheel alignment once the stuff is replaced. We have shims that we can add to the kit. The shims allow you to change the camber, so you can look at your tire wear as well. If you see on a lot of Roadsters, we have a lot of inner wheel tire wear on those.
Yeah.
And so that's negative camber, basically the wheels is coming out on the bottom, and also under acceleration it'll squat, right? So especially blown out shocks, they squat pretty decent. Putting these back in place and setting it up, the angles, these come in different thicknesses, and we can kind of correct that negative camber. Now, you won't, if you go in and do track events and things like that, you may want to keep a little bit camber, but if you're just going back and forth to work or, you know, Sunday drive something in your car, you know, you may want to look at having the camber corrected so that your center of your wear or the wear in your tire goes from that inside edge back more towards the center, so you actually get more available traction with the vehicle.
I see. For race day, at least, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're going to go race, you'd want to remove these and bring the camber back out to a negative number so that you can get more as you turn, right? The weight's going to roll, and you'll go to that edge of the tire where you need the traction.
With our in-track shocks, which, by the way, are, I think, arriving today. We got another 20 sets coming in. There's a tool that comes along with that, and there's a laminated instruction sheet for dialing. Can you tell us how the average Roadster owner should avail themselves of that tool, and when should they adjust, or if?
So when we install them, I try and talk to the customers, and we try and see what kind of comfort they want. So there's adjustability to make it kind of a soft ride. And then there's also ability to stiffen up the suspension so that if you're going to go to the track, you can, tighten everything up. There's some wrenches that go on the collars so you can adjust spring preload also because you have weight transfers. As far as, the clickers on there, there's a 50 clicks that on there, so you can go, all the way to 0, which almost locks out the shock. So that will stiffen it up and it'll help control the spring oscillations. Or you can soften it up and go all the way down. And then basically that kind of gives more of a Cadillac kind of ride. So it just kind of depends on what you want from the vehicle. We can soften the front up to get more front end grip. We can kind of tighten up the back. Tire pressures are very important with that as well. And I think we kind of, when you first took one for a ride, we kind of played with some of the settings, and then I went in and changed some of the tire pressures, and you could notice the difference of the handling of the car. So it's a big picture is, the air pressure, alignments, and then making sure that these parts stay square by putting in all the new pieces.
All the new bushing.
I know on the Model S's, especially the ones that have the air suspension systems, camber becomes an issue on those cars because of the raising and lowering of the car. with the Roadsters, is it simply the weight of the battery sitting in the back that has caused that camber on the on the rear?
For the most part, yeah, it's a lot of weight in the back. It's the base of the car. A lot of the design came from Lotus, so they automatically dialed some of that in. But it is a lot of the weight. And with the S models and even the other Teslas, we do have products that we can get and install into them to do the caster and camber corrections on them. So they also bring the tire wear back into the center tire.
Oh, okay.
We as you guys are working on these Roadsters, there was another problem that that came to light, and this is the passenger upper shock mount, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Talk a little bit about what you guys are finding and how often we're finding this, because that could be significant to some of the older Roadster owners.
So there's a 2-bolt design on these. These are what basically, so you have the lower shock mount on the control arm on the back. The fronts have an upper shock mount. And what I'm finding on the majority of them is the bolts are loosening up. So if it's, compression of the materials or the torque spec wasn't done correctly, it's hard to the car's just at an age now, it's kind of hard to go back and figure out exactly how things were set. So we're coming up with the new ones, and we're basically going to a 3-hole design. We're replacing everything with the grade 10 bolts, and then putting compression washers on there as well.
And the reason for the grade 10 bolts is because the assumption was that the bolts may have been too soft and may have stretched with age, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're basically eliminating all the possibilities and then going to a 3rd bolt design, which we've been using for a while now, eliminates any chance of this part walking back and forth as well. There's actually a hole that's existing on the vehicle. So this is another thing. If you have a good shop suspension wise, they can do this, or if you're really good at measuring stuff out and have a drill press, you could probably install these as well at home if you're going to do the suspension kit.
Okay. Now, the kit that we assembled has a number of parts in it, and maybe you can talk about each one because there's I don't know what the total count is, but there are quite a few, and there's a BOM on our listing in the e-store.
Yep. So we have the newer sway bar bushings. So this will mount to the front of the vehicle or the back of the vehicle. It holds the sway bar, it goes back. The sway bar then goes out to the wheel, and the end links attach that. And that actually would attach to the control arm right here. I think we rotate. There we go. And that's how you attach the sway bars. So I'm finding that these things are starting to age out as well, and there's a lot of play in them. When that takes place, you basically lose a lot of the ability of the sway bar to control the body roll. And so putting them back into shape, making sure that we're holding grease in here, we don't have that play, also enhances, kind of puts the car back to how it was originally intended. They do make adjustable versions of these, so if you were going to go to the track, you could switch to a set of those, dial on the suspension a little bit more depending on what you're looking for. And that's also an idea if someone's going to go do some track time. And then we have steering racks. So we've come across a couple cars now that have had steering rack issues, and we've been able to successfully rebuild them.
What is the symptom a customer would experience if there was a steering rack issue?
So it can be anything from the steering wheel not really wanting to, you got to kind of nudge it back to get back to center. There's an issue. Going down the road, when you go over the bumps, you'll hear like a little tap noise. I think you experienced that on one of the cars.
Florida car,
yes. So we were able to pull that rack out and send it out. Had it rebuilt, put it back in the car, and that cured the problem with that. And then on the end of those, there's these end links, or not the end links, they're the I forget the name off my head.
We've got track rod end, sway bar bushing, toe link.
Toe link. There we go. So these attach to the bottom of the steering rack or on the ends of them, and then this basically goes into the upright. So when you turn the steering wheel to the right, it pushes out and basically turns the spindle, which attaches to the bearing and then to the wheel. And when you turn left, it pulls back the other way, and it kind of moves back and forth.
One thing I want to point out with the Florida car, there was some rodent damage.
Yes.
And it was pre-existing before this second owner actually, owned the car. And by chewing out that rubber sleeve,
He has like a bellows, kind of a boot that
Right.
covers over that. Because you have bushings in there, you want to make sure you don't get any dust, you don't get any water or corrosion, things like that taking place. So when the rodent had eat through that, it allowed,
exposed it all.
yes, it had exposure, and we end up finding little bits of sand in there and things like that, which contributed to the bushing going bad inside the rack. So when you were driving it and we kept hearing that noise in the front, once we pulled the rack out, we could see it actually moving around quite a bit.
And there was some play in the wheel too, I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those are some of the symptoms that the owner should be looking for then. Play in the wheel, some noise and steering,
Yep.
difficulty in getting it to respond, binding, you
Yep.
know, those types of things. Yeah, I mean, the Roadsters that we've repaired the steering rack on, they're just flawless,
Yeah.
nice and smooth.
Yeah. We have a couple of comments
All right,
this
let's-
morning.
yeah, let's take a few
First on
questions.
Instagram says, from Meta Bombay, hi folks, good morning.
Welcome, thank you. And by the way, anybody on Instagram, if you want to see the picture behind us, go to YouTube. The picture is a AI-generated news studio, not done with Midjourney though, which is what we've been using for a year now. This was actually done with Chat GPT-4, which is now combined or linked with DALL-E, allowing it to do images. So not only do you get text responses from this OpenAI tool, but you will now get images. And this is our first time news studio. And the major difference is above Mark's head, you see the word global or the words global news. Well, Midjourney would never render words properly because it was not a large language model and it did not speak in words. It was always gibberish. So that's one of the advantages we're looking for with using ChatGPT-4. If we tell it, give us a Tesla Gigafactory, the Tesla name on the factory will be exactly TESLA rather than just some gibberish. Instagram, again, Meta Bombay. Which model is the best for long drives and long battery placement years? Well, it's definitely not the Tesla Roadster. It is a low mileage car or a low range car, let's say. Even if you get the 3.0 battery pack, at the correct charge rate, you're going to get about 230 miles range. And it's also not very comfortable for long trips, and there's no
Yeah.
luggage space.
Yeah, no luggage space, and for some of us who are a little bit larger in size, good luck getting out.
In and out, yeah. Instagram, Soul to Stone says, hey guys, I got one for you. 2022 Model S, vibration and steering wheel only at 75 to 82 miles an hour. Wheels and tires were swapped out to eliminate balance or bends. Tesla investigation pending. What does that sound like to you, Mike?
Oh, without having the vehicle in front of me, it's kind of hard to. We had a car that came in very similar to that. I took it for a spin. I got up to 5 miles an hour. Steering wheel was shaking. Went around the neighborhood, came back, pulled the wheels off, and the tires were actually worn in the center and actually were bulging. So the tires on that vehicle were somewhat aged. So we've recommended replacing the tires, especially with the heat cycling out here in Phoenix. If you have the wrong tire pressures in the vehicle, that can create friction. Friction's heat the enemy of tires, or even having an impact on a tire will cause that. If it's without actually looking at the vehicle, it's hard to tell if they swapped out tires.
He did say that, yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
The
So
tires were swapped.
it's suspension related. It could be. It's really hard to kind of finger that down without actually looking at the vehicle.
Yeah, he mentions that Tesla has known about this. The technicians know. The yoke or steering wheel vibrates almost like a lane assist, and he's only got 15K, or I'm thinking 15,000 miles on the vehicle. That 2012 Tesla Model S that I drove for a while would do that, anywhere between 73 and about 76 miles an hour. Sometimes I get vibration. I would think at one point I thought, it's just where I'm driving, but then I got to where I noticed it was fairly pronounced based on speed, not based on location. But for me, it ended up just being a tire issue. We replaced the tires and found that there was some wear on the inside of the tires, due to a little bit of camber on the front and it had the air shocks. Replaced it with some new tires, and it was good to go.
Yeah,
Now, he's saying that he started this problem started in 2023, mid 2023. Could an update change the calibration somehow? I have tried this with 19-inch wheels and 21-inch wheels, all at all ride heights. What about regen braking issues?
I'm not sure on the regen braking. At all ride heights tells me that he has air suspension on his car, though.
Yeah. We would have to look at it. If you're near Phoenix, we'd love to take it, put it up on the lift and check it out for you. Herbert Buder in Düsseldorf, Germany. He says, greetings, welcome. He says, interesting stuff today. Look forward to a good hour with you as usual. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So getting back to Roadster things. All right, we've got a number of items in that new e-store suspension kit. And what we tried to do was include everything that should be changed except for the shocks in this particular item. And those are optional. But yeah, with 15-year-old cars, that's also a good thing to change, is it not?
Yep. Yeah, the bushings also, if you're doing the install work, we got to make sure you use the grease that comes with it. If you don't use the grease in it, they could potentially make noise. So
Oh,
it would
really?
be another sound going down the road that you would hear. And, the Roadsters are amazing. They're so quiet. You go down the road and it's kind of like you're part of the earth. There's no noise. I'm used to supercars where you get on the gas pedal and everyone around you freaks out because of the noise of the engine, right? So you get in the Roadster and it's really quiet. So you don't want to skip on putting the grease on the inside, the outside.
Now, are these bushings that we're offering an improvement from the original in terms of material?
Yes, so these are a much better material. The old ones are rubber material. They'll give you a little deflection as you go down the road too. They do offer a little bit better as far as vibration. I have not, after installing these in a couple cars now, I've not been able to feel much of a difference in road vibration, but someone may swap out to these and say, oh, I feel a little bit more noise or a little bit more vibration. If it is, it's very, very minimal. And it's going to be an improvement because most of these things I'm seeing now are collapsed to where you're getting the rubber's just so smashed in there now that it's just transferring instead of absorbing across anyway. So this is going to be an improvement regardless.
So it's going to ride smoother because they're not as loose. They're nice and tight again.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Sure. And I would think that, you're not just doing these either. You're going to be doing those plus possibly shocks plus other components.
Well, the bushing count, I think, is something like 16 of these, correct?
Yeah, so they come in halves. So the way these come apart is you'll have 2 halves, and then they're different lengths. So you'll put these in, and then make sure these things are greased up, slide that in, and then basically as you do that, so yeah, you end up with 2 and then 4, and then you have uppers and lowers as well. So it starts adding up. It definitely increases, the sharpness of the steering.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't had a Roadster brand new, this puts it as close to being brand new again as far as handling. So, a little bit of work will make a big improvement, and you'll be able to experience what they would feel like as if it rolled out of the factory.
I find that even the people that were the first buyers of the Roadster and experienced a brand new Roadster with good suspension, so many years have gone by, and the change is so gradual and so subtle. 15 years later, it rides like a dump truck, and they didn't realize all along the way how bad it's gotten. And what we find is when they get their cars back with new suspension components like this, it's a revelation to them again. Oh my God, this is what it used to be like. Now I remember.
Yep.
Right.
So then also we have the bolt kits that we do. We started bringing out bolt kits because anytime we do any suspension work, the nylock nuts need to be replaced. Mm-hmm. And we have torque specs as well that we apply to these.
And let's talk about that for a moment. What we're saying, nylock nuts. There's actually a nylon sleeve on here, and with age that wears. And what the nylock portion does is it locks that bolt and that nut together, kind of like a thread lock, to so it doesn't loosen. Do we put any thread lock on these?
I do. I still put thread lock on these. It's a good idea. Tesla also calls for it in the manual. So when we go in and reassemble the car, we pull up the Tesla manual. We get the torque specs out of there as well each time, and then it also recommends putting thread locker on there,
Gotcha.
and we do that as well.
Okay. Is there any component here that we have not talked about?
I think the only thing else I've got is this is the original bracket that goes behind the strut mount when it's in the car. So
Okay.
basically, that shows the original bolts from the 2 style. So basically, this bolts up to the shock on this side. This will bolt to the aluminum foot on the car, and then this basically goes behind that, and then it locks together.
And one of the things that we see when the bolts have come loose on that bracket or on either bracket, there's actually some scraping on this side here, and you can see where the metal has actually been shaved a bit because of all of the movement that has taken place over the years. And again, what would be the symptoms a customer would experience if this was loose?
Sometimes you get some noise. You'll get some play in the steering wheel. Just depends on how bad it is. And then also we've seen is where the holes get elongated because once this thing starts coming loose, the whole bracket will start rocking back and forth, and then the shock also moves. So, we've started with all of our inspections when cars come in now for general maintenance and stuff. We pull the shocks, we inspect this.
And that's become part of our Roadster annual.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
because I've seen it enough times now that I'm pretty sure it affects every single one out there at this point. So it's a big safety concern for us. So we want to make sure that we watch out for the customer and take the time to make sure it's correct.
And then with this kit is a complete set of hardware.
Yep. So this is the upper lower control arms in the bag, new washers and nylocks and bolts. I am finding on the rear of the cars where the adjustable parts on the suspension, the trailing arms, we're finding that there's a lot of wear in there. It's in the back towards the car. When they start the wear, it can actually change the toe on the rear spindle on the wheels. And another thing to point out, if you're going to do these kits, this is right-hand thread.
Okay, and left-hand thread for
Yep.
the other side.
So the other side has left-hand thread, and then this is right-hand thread. So when it goes in the car, this goes to the spindle, this goes to the chassis. The reason why they do that is because the aluminum piece that they have in the middle, you're able to adjust that, right? And so you don't have to take everything apart. And it has lock nuts on it. So once you make your adjustment for the alignment, you go back in and lock everything.
Gotcha.
But if the right-hand thread won't thread in, but if you're take it all apart and trying to get it all back to work and you can't get the thread, swap it around, and more than likely it's going to go back for you.
Okay.
Good point.
All right, so it's like a turnbuckle. You've got different threads on either end, and the rotation either pulls it together or spreads it apart.
Yep. We also, with these, we're seeing a lot of these rubber boots, which hold the grease. We're seeing these tear.
Okay.
And then it's also creating some play. It's kind of, once you lose the grease in there, that piece starts bouncing around. It's kind of like a ball joint kind of way it's set up in there. So you need the grease that circulates around it to keep it lubricated. And the stuff just starts having a lot of play and start making a lot of noise. Sometimes you can tell by the tire wear as well if these are going bad. Just
Gotcha.
depends on the age of the tires as well.
Now, you also mentioned some specialty tools. Obviously, this needs a press in order to get that ball joint out. And the bushings, special tool for that too, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we have a special tool. I've tried to kind of do this without the special tool, but these things are in there pretty tight. Getting the special tool, this isn't really expensive stuff. It's always nice to have in the toolbox, and it makes this job a whole lot faster. You don't even need a press. So on some vehicles, you need a big giant press, like a 20-ton press, to press these things in and out. This is just basically a couple of hand tools, and you can put it in there, press that out, and press the new ones in. These things, for the most part, just slide right in. There's no reason to press them in. Even when you apply this in there, it's just getting these old ones out, making sure all the surfaces are clean too. When I take these things out, we also do an inspection. I make sure the welds are good. There's no cracks, no damage like that. Some cars are secondhand or third hand. We don't know, what the previous history is of the vehicle, so we just do a quick, look down, making sure that there's no cracks or anything, no potholes,
And how many curbs they've smacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what's your recommendation regarding somebody trying to tackle this themselves? I mean, tech support will offer that, correct?
Yes, so we can do tech support. Torque wrench is a big part of this. We need to make sure that everything gets torqued down correctly. It's not just throw a wrench on until it's tight. These actually have a very specific torque to it because you have to load the surface correctly. If you over tighten it, you can pull the ball joint up and you can accelerate wear.
Okay.
If you leave it loose, obviously it's going to come apart. And these aren't captive. A few years ago, we were seeing these things fail, and when they fail, not on Tesla Roadsters, but when they failed on other cars, you would see the tire drop out and the wheel well, and then the car drop to the ground. They've kind of changed the design on a lot of the newer vehicles. I'm pretty sure when I looked at the S model the last time, the newer ones, they had the interlocking design, so if one of these failed, it's still not ideal, but it would lock it kind of into place from it completely coming apart. But this is, obviously an older design, so we want to make sure they get torqued correctly. Same thing with the other side of this control arm, the A-arms. Part of this goes into the cross member that holds and supports the battery pack. So it's important that that gets torqued correctly. If you over tighten it, you strip something out, you got to find that piece that holds the battery pack in. And then go from there. And then the other side, on the front, this is going to basically attach to the front here. And as that attaches, there's a big long bolt that goes through there. So if you over tighten that, you're going to create accelerated wear on these as well.
Okay. Now, another topic that I wanted to hit. Hey, Jesse, if you can bring up a picture of the brake lines, and it's in the images folder. You had mentioned that something else as these Roadsters are aging, you have brake lines, which are, of course, part of the suspension system, in that they will flex.
Yep. So as like on this control arm right here, I'll pick it up one more time. You see the stud right here, and basically there's a 10 millimeter bolt that goes on top of that, and that holds the brake line down. So the brake line goes from a steel line that comes down the chassis, connects to that, goes across, attaches to the control arm, and then moves over to the brake caliper. What I'm starting to see is, as those things get older, a little bit softer pedal we're seeing, and we're starting to see on the ends where they seem like they're starting to pull out.
What would be the reason for the softer pedal, that symptom?
So when the brake lines start to fail, right, the steel braiding kind of holds the pressure together. A really interesting trick, if someone is looking for something to do one day in their garage, they have an older vehicle. Motorcycles are great for this. They have the old rubber brake lines on. Put your hand on that and grab the master cylinder, the brake, and you can feel it swell, right? So with the steel braided lines, you kind of started to eliminate that, but as they age, that starts to happen again. It's also a good opportunity to remove the old brake fluid out and flush that out. Because you don't want contaminants in that. If it's original, you want to get that stuff out of there. It attracts water, brake fluid, so it lowers the boiling point of the brakes. So then you have a softer pedal that way as well. So it's really good to get that stuff swapped out. Brake lines, they're aging. They're not meant to last that long on these vehicles. Cars are quick. They handle really well. It's one of the things with the supercar owners from over the years, they want to go really fast, but they don't understand you got to be able to stop that vehicle at the same time, right?
You get it up to 200, you got a ways to go to get that to stop.
Yeah, you got to use a boat anchor to get that thing slowed down. So, using the old brake lines that are aged at this point, especially how quick these cars accelerate, right?
Yeah.
If you're out on the freeway and a deer runs across you in some parts of the country that happens, you want to be able to get on the brakes and know that they're going to work.
Right.
And so we're seeing a lot of these things just starting to age. That's our next thing to get working on.
So these braided brake lines, there's a set of 4, and they're exactly what's needed for all 4 wheels and on a Roadster, right?
Yes.
So soft pedal feel would be one of the symptoms, squishy, and anything visual that they should be looking for, like on the ends of those connectors?
Yeah, look on the ends. Obviously, look for leaks. See if they're starting to leak. See if any of the braiding is starting to come apart. So it's kind of like steel wool. If you run your fingers over it, you got to be very careful because you can get poked by that
You
stuff.
get blistered.
Yeah, you'll feel it. But you want to make sure that clean them off too. There's a lot of brake dust, a lot of road dust and debris and stuff that gets blown around these cars. So we want to make sure that we get that stuff cleaned up and do a really good visual inspection of it. Because it's always moving with the suspension, it's always cycling. So it's being worn down just
Just
normal.
from wear and tear and use.
Yeah. So with the age of them, I've seen a few that we've changed out that have been kind of questionable, and I flag it. I'm like, we're not gonna. We can make these cars run like brand new with the battery packs and everything else, but if they can't stop it,
Right.
And
then changing the brake fluid, it's inexpensive enough. It's not a major expense. It's just good measure.
Yep.
But any tips as to, I've heard certain colors tell you whether it's compromised.
Yeah, certain colors. We have a special device I use, is an electronic device. I dip it in there, and it'll tell me the water content on them.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and it'll give me a plus or minus. And that's a really quick way. That's that stuff. Super dark color is a sign. A lot of times also, the darker the brake fluid is, it could be the brake lines starting to come apart, and so it's picking up that rubber on the inside of the braiding and starting to pull it back. Now, the new style ones, I think, are Teflon is the inner, and then the braiding on the outside, which has a lot longer shelf life and works a lot better than the current ones that are.
Excellent. And both of these items that we've talked about so far are new items on our e-store, grubermotors.com. And if you go to the Tesla Roadster section, those will be the first 2 items currently, both the brake lines and all the suspension components. And for those of you chiming in about the other Tesla-type vehicles, we will continue to do sessions like this, technical sessions for those vehicles as well. But in the meantime, we can take a look at a few of them. Instagram, Soul Stone says, load or no load?
And I think Soul Stone was referring back to the Model S that was having the vibrations at higher speeds with that particular one.
Okay.
So I know when on my 2012 Model S, when I was talking about the vibrations, it didn't matter if there was a load on it or not.
Yeah. Facebook, Anthony Venditti, welcome. He says, hi guys, question for you. I own a 2023 Model Y with 1,500 miles on it. Wow, low mileage. The car has dual motor extended battery pack. This car gets nowhere near the mileage it's supposed to get, charging the battery to 80% and driving it. I'm lucky if I get 150 miles with nothing on in this car. Any comments? Well, I would say the first thing to do is start with Tesla. It's under warranty, of course.
Yeah.
And I'd be very curious to see what their assessment is on something like this. But it doesn't sound right. You definitely have something that needs to be investigated.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't sound right. Those long-range Model Ys are supposed to get almost twice that mileage.
YouTube, RC Robinson San says, upvoted, listening in on my Model 3. We did that the other day. My wife and I were going to IKEA.
Yeah.
And I turned myself on from a YouTube video, and she got really annoyed. She says, stop it. It's going to your head. Turn that thing off. Okay, well, we've got a few news items here. Jesse, if you can bring up a picture. It is a picture of the stolen car. And somebody after the last podcast, gave an assessment as to why the passenger side airbag would have been ripped off of the dash. And he said more than likely the thieves thought that was the glove compartment.
Yeah.
And those really don't take much to rip off. You have these little plastic clips there, so that makes sense. Because we couldn't figure out anything else that they might be interested in there. The final story on this is there's a slight bit of body damage on the charge port door. The driver's side door won't close properly. Could be alignment. We don't know yet. But Tesla is handling the whole thing and taking care of getting this customer's car back on the road. What we also don't have is any information yet on what the battery is like and whether it got bricked and whether it's stable and healthy again. Something else I wanted to share with you. We've all been watching the European Tesla Roadster 3.0 pack evolving in Marco Nolte's German shop. And he has an update for us. The last one we got was, I'm in Norway, I'm busy right now, but I got it down to maybe one code or one error left. So here's his latest update. He says, hey, Roadster community. The latest scoop on the Roadster Taycan battery project that he's been diving into, and he's now calling it Roadster Taycan battery project, which is kind of cool. I wonder how Porsche feels about that. They're probably flattered that, the original...
I don't know. You'd hope so, but
yeah.
Then we were talking in the last podcast about all these insane restrictions that people, especially Porsche or higher-end cars, will put. Hopefully they're okay with it.
Yep. He says, finally, after a bit more debugging than expected, we've also got charging to work now. And he's got a picture there. If we can throw that picture up, Jesse, it is what did I call it? Marco No Progress. And that's Nolte, by the way, is the full name. He goes by Marco No, abbreviated. He says, there's still some tweaking necessary to make the Roadster calculate the range correctly and to debug some sleep issues when parked for a long time, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. He says, charging and driving with full power range works, ! That's a major coup. Now, he says, power-wise, this is for sure the quickest Roadster on the planet. So there's a performance increase. I bet a lot of people are going to be interested in that. He says the battery has quite a low voltage drop under load, so with a fully charged battery, I wasn't brave enough to test the Roadster's performance mode, as I am a bit worried about damaging the PEM. We're doing what Chaz did, which is snapping the axles or the half shafts. Yeah. He took a 62 Ford station wagon and dropped a Caterpillar engine into that, a gigantic diesel engine, and then was surprised that on a freeway, when he punched it, he snapped the drive shaft. So he says a new mechanical design to make manufacturing simpler and also to add water cooling for the Taycan modules is almost done in CAD. With that design, it will also be possible to fit the structure into the original battery box, which is going to be important. Nobody wants to change the frame and all that. Now, he says the big question still is whether to keep using the Taycan modules or use different ones. For this low quantity, it's probably impossible to get real grade A new battery modules. If anyone has any ideas about this, please let me know. And then P.S., he says, yes, we need to fix that charge port LED ring. It looks like it's dark or maybe the wrong color. I didn't catch that in the picture. You know, one option here is in the United States, we see a lot of collision damage cars at Copart, Mannheim, IAA. And sometimes these cars have very few miles on them, and the auction houses typically do report mileage on the cars. Mm-hmm. If you can get a low Porsche Taycan, vehicle, that would be a great donor car for some of these battery packs.
Yeah, I can't imagine him wanting to go too differently on the engine, because you almost have to re-engineer from scratch if you use a different battery module. Yeah. But I'd be incredibly interested to see the log files on that Roadster. Right. Should he try to punch it and see what kind of electricity is going, he's coursing through that PEM.
Right. And then, of course, we have to think about ways to beef up the PEM, different IGBTs. Definitely heavier wire, perhaps, all of that. But, it's not a surprise to me that Marco Nolte is actually having some success with this. As I had pointed out in earlier sessions, he was the first software guru that was helping us with flood damage Model S's that we were buying in 2017.
Yep.
And he was remarkable. Sitting there in Germany, he could actually remotely get into these cars and, just dial in all kinds of improvements, find errors, and then point us in a direction as to what needed to be repaired.
Yeah, amazing. He's an amazing talent. One of the few people in this world that I totally believe is going to get this thing down.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see if we have another picture here. Transport. Wanted to talk about that. The transport costs for Roadsters, and the majority of our Roadsters are shipped in. We have a few local customers, one up in Sedona, for example, but the transport costs have been just going into orbit, and it started with COVID. We used to be able to bring in cars from SoCal for around $400 or $500 one way.
Mm-hmm.
It's twice that nowadays. East Coast, $2,000, $2,500 is not, and this is for open transport. I mean, it used to be that enclosed transport was about 30-40% higher, understandably so. But costs keep going up. We don't know if there's any end in sight, and have no idea why they're going up that much. Anybody has any ideas, we'd certainly like to hear from you. In fact, we had one customer that said, is this round trip? We quoted like $2,400. It was just one way. The other thing that we're noticing is when Roadsters get bricked, if you can throw up another picture here, Jesse, it's Roadster on a lift. This is a Roadster that is now finally on its way in. But what made it difficult was it was bricked. It was up on a four-post lift. There was a car underneath it. And, of course, we had to get that car out of there and then try to bring this locked wheel Roadster off of this four-post lift. And the customer attempted to do this with some jacks, and it turns out that it slid sideways, slid off of the ramp, and now it's straddling the ramp. You can see the left portion there underneath the car. The solution here is, if your car is about to get bricked, follow the instructions on our newsletter. While it's still live, make sure you get a log file, first of all, put it in tow mode, and pull that service plug right thereafter. Now the car's free rolling. You can use your emergency brake to stop it from rolling. Mm-hmm. But your cost now to transport that car is going to be infinitely less than if you have a locked wheel Roadster that they have to winch, especially off of something like this where you've got obstructions. Or the worst one we had was using dollies. We had one in Laguna Beach, or Newport Beach, I think it was, and the driveway was river rock. It was beautiful, of course.
Yes.
But those little Harbor Freight dolly wheels did not like those river rock. So we have a newsletter out there on our website, and it's called What to Do When Your Roadster Gets Bricked. You follow those 3 steps, and life will be much simpler than this poor customer that ended up having to hire a forklift. That's how they did this, by the way. 8-foot forklift, one side shift, and finally got it back up on there. And then we suggested have them use some WD-40 on the ramp, so when they're winching, you're not screeching your tires and wearing those badly.
Get a flat spot.
Get a flat spot, exactly, yes. All right.
Couple questions that we have. Instagram, SRT4Andy asks, what training is needed to work on Roadsters?
Well, Mike, you're probably a good judge of, answering that one.
Experience. Well, it's the best form of that I can probably recommend is listening. You're not going to come in and work off something just immediately. Someone's going to train you. So, taking the time, listening to the instruction that they're providing you, they have the experience, so they're gonna, they're not gonna want you to start off the wrong way. I've come from motorcycle backgrounds, and I worked at the proving grounds doing durability engineering, and then I worked for a long time on supercars, McLarens, Ferraris, things like that. So I have a little bit different approach on how I look at stuff, and we've been able to apply that and kind of help things along a little bit in the shop, which has been great. But schooling, I spent 3 years as a instructor at WyoTech. You know, having sometimes it's better to have someone with no experience that comes in because they don't have bad habits, and you can kind of do that. But being able to listen and start with that, know how to measure things, read a measuring tape, check tire pressure, very important on that. And knowing when to stop. That's a big thing. Ask questions. I have all the experience that I have, and I'm always asking Brian, hey, can you double check this for me? Hey, I have a question, and please come help me. There's never a bad question except for the one that you never ask.
Well, we find that with our people at Gruber Motor Company, they come from varying disciplines. And like in Mike's case, a strong mechanical background, working on supercars, suspension type issues, and then migrating into the EV portions, working on the batteries, for example, and then eventually the electronics. And so you get a well-rounded education. But as I advise anybody, if you're looking to get into the EV space, get yourself a job with an OEM, with an EV manufacturer. Even if you have to start as a janitor, bring a good work ethic, and they'll recognize that, and a thirst and a hunger for knowledge. And there isn't an employer on earth that's going to turn away that kind of passion and commitment to something. They're going to give you a chance.
Right.
I was up, I'm always up trying to research stuff, and had a question yesterday that came up about some torque specs on a PEM. 3 o'clock this morning, I was flipping through my manuals and found it, and unfortunately I went to hit it, share it to everyone on our text message group, and I accidentally hit send. So I think at like 3:30 this morning, everyone got torque specs on the
It's
PEM.
okay, yeah.
That's okay. Pete was probably up.
Yeah. Was that text I got? But yeah, you have to integrate work into your personal life. If you're trying to work the clock, 8 to 5, yeah, you're going to have a decent income, the rest of your life, and maybe get a mortgage on a house and maybe a boat. But if you really want to create something, you've got to get passionate about your career. You have to integrate that in your personal life, and all kinds of new worlds will open up for you. That's always been my advice as an entrepreneur to anybody.
That's exactly right. Crunch Grace Hopper is joining us with a question on it. He was watching the rust damage shorts video. Now, this video is about rust on a Model S battery pack.
Okay.
And it says, being amphibious, are the CT battery packs designed with special water/humidity barriers, or have rust prevention been fully addressed since the Roadster days?
I can answer that. The Roadster was a proof of concept vehicle. I don't think that I would that you could have taken a Roadster and try to do an amphibious assault on another country or something. And then came the Model S. It was better, but not perfect. For example, there's a rubber boot that covers up the high voltage connection and the CAN signal connectors. Well, it's rubber, folks. And with heat and age and, corrosion, wetness, and temperature cycling, it gets brittle, it gets hard, and eventually moisture would migrate into that section.
Right.
And I can't imagine that Tesla was ignoring all of these clues that they were constantly getting at the service center level and staying with those original designs. So no, my expectation is that this product continuously improves. And if Elon is actually doing a press release showing a Cybertruck floating in the water and then claiming it can probably go across the river, across the lake, whatever he said, it's probably true. So, I don't expect that these later model vehicles are going to have these same kinds of problems. And if they do, they'll quickly resolve them.
Well, doesn't the Cybertruck have, or isn't it rumored anyway, to have one of the structural battery packs that has all of the high density foam and stuff that's all protecting the battery? That to me would largely inhibit rust all by itself.
Yeah, because it fills all the cavities.
Yeah, it's filling all the cavities and stuff.
Good point. Okay.
Oh, good question, Crunch.
And then YouTube Crunch says that rust short was on a Model S battery. I'm not sure precisely what video you're talking about, but once coolant leaks inside that battery, or water for that matter,
Yeah.
you have voltages there, and you get what's called electrolysis, where you're moving metal around, and rust, it would look like rust.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those, and when you get a module that's that bad, there is no repair.
Well, and it's, there's interesting thoughts that can come up. Okay, you've got these structural batteries. What if you get a coolant like in a Model Y structural battery pack? It's eventually going to happen. So what's your symptom going to be? How is that going to work? We don't know any of that stuff yet, but we will.
The
Hey, Pete?
HVAC, the HVAC systems on the Model S's, they consistently condensate on the top of the battery packs as well. We see that when we pull the battery packs apart and we seal them specially to make sure that moisture doesn't get back into the battery pack.
Yeah, and there was an original design flaw where the condensate drip was actually on top of the battery pack. That was a problem. All right. There was a question about a accessory sale on our Tesla Roadster matchmaking site. And we do have a section there. It doesn't happen often where we sell accessories like hard tops. In this case, it was the TS70 Clipper Creek charger. And it sold so quickly that we didn't even have a chance to do the email or finish the email to all of the pre-qualified buyers. And by the way, just to explain that a bit, we have 423 pre-qualified Tesla Roadster buyers now on the list, and it keeps growing. And these are people that we know that have been pre-qualified that are eligible to purchase any type of Roadster. They're not scammers, they're not tire kickers, they're not, looky-loos, that type of thing. So while we were sending this accessory to that list, it sold before we even got finished. And then our commitment is within 24 hours, if it hasn't sold to that pre-qualified buyer list, then it goes out to social media and it gets even more visible. Well, this particular thing sold quickly. And then a question arose from one of our customers, actually. She said, I'm curious why people are buying them since a Tesla wall connector works well with an adapter. What we're talking here about, the Clipper Creek TS70 was the original dedicated Tesla Roadster wall charger, which was charging only Tesla Roadsters back in 2008 or so. She says, I guess because I have a Gen 2 wall connector and I can charge at a full 70 amps if needed, and the new ones are limited to 48. But still, if you have any other EV, then you could tie up that circuit for only one car. And yes, I have a Tesla Roadster wall connector or wall charger sitting in a box unused. So what you could replicate the function that this Clipper Creek TS70 was doing with a CAN Senior adapter, which has a NACS input port, and then the proprietary Tesla Roadster connector, and you could get the same charge rates. So my comment was why people are or should be buying this is because when you combine, yes, hers can handle both, I'm saying, but the attraction for these first generation TS70 chargers is or should be for Roadster collectors who are focused on originality, since the Clipper Creek TS70s were the ultimate wall charger when the Roadster was being sold. So it's part of the car's provenance. And some people over the years have sold their chargers. Well, as these things become more collectible, if it was on the build sheet, it might be important to have that piece to merge with the Roadster when you sell it.
It really might. It reminds me of a computer keyboard I got by a company called North Bay Electronics back in 1992. It was a heavy, just a big old lug of a thing, and aluminum base. And then about 3 years ago, I found one of those on eBay. It didn't even wear out. I didn't have the PS2 connector for it, so I'm like, just throw it away. It's trash. Yeah, on eBay it was $2,100.
I did that with a stereo one time, a Marantz 2700, I think it was. And I bought it at a garage sale for $60. It was 250 watts RMS per channel, right?
Oh, wow.
Into 8 ohms, mind you, which is pretty hefty. But we ended up using it here during construction. It got drywall dust on it, sand, sawdust, and I figured, it'll fetch maybe $60, $100 again, right? That thing sold for $2,400 because it was collectible.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and you never
should save
know.
this stuff.
You never know. And this Clipper Creek Charger is gonna become the same type of thing.
Yeah. And the other thing about these, by the way, they are extraordinarily reliable. They're bulletproof. We repair them. The only thing that can go wrong is there's a little violet pilot wire inside. And if your strain relief has come loose for the big, thick cable that comes out of there, bigger than a garden hose, by the way, then it can pull on that little wire and unclip it from a fast-on connecting tab connection. You just click it back together and you're fine. But other than that, these things are extraordinarily reliable. You know, we repair them and we see very few each year that are actually defective in some way. So that's the reason why you would want to buy one of these Clipper Creek TS70 dedicated Tesla Roadster wall chargers. Well, I think we're at 12 o'clock at this point. We've had a pretty good hour. We'll be doing more of these kinds of technical sessions for the Roadster owners. So stay tuned. We will, of course, announce those on the various social media sites. I want to thank Mike for joining us for this session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
And we will see you next Tuesday then for the Tesla Roadster portion of our EV podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.